Life in the Undercity wasn't exactly a walk in the park. The air hung thick with the stench of stale sweat and recycled water, and the only light came from the flickering bioluminescent lamps powered by the bone turners. These genetically engineered humans were our saviors, a living light source in a world perpetually shrouded in an unnatural darkness. Their skin shimmered with an eerie internal glow, fueled by a bioluminescent organ implanted generations ago. It wasn't much, just a faint greenish light that barely penetrated the suffocating blackness. But compared to the absolute void outside the city walls, it was a beacon of hope. I was 17, old enough to understand the caste system. Us Luminless were born in the darkness, destined to toil away in the factories, our faces permanently turned upwards towards the precious, flickering lamps. The bone turners, revered and feared in equal measure, lived above us in the glimmering district, their bioluminescence a constant reminder of their superiority. One day, while scavenging for spare parts in the Undercity scrapyard, I stumbled upon a hidden chamber. Inside, huddled in the shadows, was a young bone turner, his skin flickering erratically, throwing distorted shadows on the dusty crates. He looked older than his years, his eyes filled with a haunted weariness. "You shouldn't be here, Luminless," he rasped, his voice a guttural whisper. Fear warred with curiosity. Bone turners weren't supposed to interact with us Luminless. They were untouchable, ethereal beings who occasionally patrolled the Undercity, enforcing the strict curfew that kept us indoors after sunset, when the darkness outside became an overwhelming entity. I just saw your light," I stammered, my voice barely above a squeak. I was curious. He fell silent for a moment, his hand clenched into a fist. Finally, he spoke again, his voice laced with a desperate urgency. "Don't trust the Luminous Council. They're hiding something." The Luminous Council, a group of elder bone turners, ruled over both humans and bone turners alike. Their word was law, their pronouncements delivered through crackling speakers that echoed throughout the city. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He pulled his cloak tighter, revealing a horrifying sight. Patches of his once vibrant bioluminescent skin had dulled, replaced by an unsettling, ashen gray. It was like a living shadow creeping across his body. "It's the darkness," he hissed, his voice trembling. "It's consuming us." My mind reeled. The darkness was always out there, a malevolent entity held at bay by the bone turner's light. But according to this bone turner, it was somehow infecting them. Over the next few weeks, I met with him, Kai, he called himself, in secret. He shared his story, his voice growing weaker with each meeting. Apparently, some bone turners were experiencing an agonizing transformation. Their bioluminescence was fading, replaced by the same ashen gray that marred Kai's skin. "The council says it's a rare genetic defect," Kai whispered, his once glowing eyes now dull and lifeless. "But it's spreading. They're locking the infected away, out of sight." He showed me a hidden passage leading out of the glimmering district. It was a network of maintenance tunnels, pitch black except for the faint glow emanating from his dwindling light. "We have to expose this," he pleaded, his voice barely a whisper. "If the Luminless knew." Fear threatened to consume me, but the desperation in Kai's eyes spurred me on. We ventured into the claustrophobic tunnels, the darkness pressing in on us like a suffocating blanket. The journey was filled with chilling sounds, dripping water, unseen creatures scuttling in the shadows. Kai stumbled several times, his once steady bioluminescence flickering erratically. Finally, we found ourselves in a hidden chamber within the glimmering district. The stench of decay hung thick in the air, and dozens of shrouded figures lay huddled on the floor, their bodies radiating the horrifying ashen gray. Tears welled up in my eyes. These weren't defective bone turners. They were the discarded, the forgotten, the victims of the darkness that crawled beneath their own skin. Suddenly, a booming voice echoed through the chamber. "There you are, Kai," the disembodied voice hissed, laden with a cold authority. A figure emerged from the shadows, its luminous glow brighter, fiercer than any bone turner I'd ever seen. It was the Grand Luminary, the head of the Luminous Council. "You've shown weakness, Kai," the Grand Luminary boomed, his voice resonating with a terrifying power. Kai, his bioluminescence now a mere flicker, stood defiant. "The truth needs to be known," he rasped, his voice raspy. "The darkness, it's..." Before he could finish, the Grand Luminary lunged. A blinding flash of bioluminescence filled the chamber, followed by a sickening crunch. Kai crumpled to the floor, his faint light extinguished forever. A wave of nausea washed over me, but terror kept me rooted to the spot. The Grand Luminary turned his glowing gaze towards me. "And you, Luminless," he hissed, "witness to a forbidden truth." Panic surged through me. I was trapped, exposed. But then, a desperate plan formed in my mind. They need to know about the darkness. I shouted, my voice shaking. "The Luminless, we can help. We can share the burden." The Grand Luminary's eyes narrowed. The idea of a Luminless sharing the responsibility, the burden of the Bone Turners, seemed to intrigue him. "Explain," he commanded, his voice a low growl. With a trembling voice, I spun a tale of unity, of a combined effort against the encroaching darkness. I spoke of Luminless volunteers, specially equipped with bioluminescent lamps fueled by Bone Turner organs. A horrifying sacrifice, but one that might buy them time. The Grand Luminary considered my words in a heavy silence that stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he spoke. "You propose an interesting solution, Luminless. A desperate one, but perhaps a necessary one." He beckoned towards a pair of silent Bone Turners flanking him. "Take him to the laboratories. See if his proposal holds any merit." Relief flooded my veins, so intense it almost made me dizzy. I wasn't free, not yet, but I had bought myself some time, and more importantly, a sliver of hope. The following weeks were a blur of tests, examinations, and endless lectures on the intricate details of the Bone Turner bioluminescent organ. I learned about the agonizing harvesting process, the delicate balance of light and decay that kept the Bone Turners glowing. But most importantly, I learned about the darkness. It wasn't just an absence of light, it was a living entity, a malevolent force that fed on despair and fear. The Bone Turners, for all their advancements, were not immune. Their bioluminescent organs, a beacon of hope for humanity, were slowly being corrupted by the very darkness they fought to keep at bay. The solution I proposed was barbaric, yes, but it was also a gamble. If Luminless bodies could be adapted to host the bioluminescent organs, then the burden could be shared. It wouldn't be a cure, but it might slow the inexorable spread of the ashen gray, the creeping darkness within the Bone Turners. Finally, the day of the experiment arrived. My heart hammered against my ribs as they wheeled me into the sterile operating room, the harsh fluorescent lights a stark contrast to the warm bioluminescence I'd grown accustomed to. The procedure was a nightmarish symphony of pain and the metallic tang of blood. As the harvested Bone Turner organ was grafted onto my chest, I screamed, my vision blurring at the edges. But through the haze of agony, a single thought flickered. If this worked, if I could become a light source, then maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't all be in vain. Then, less darkness. When I awoke, I was weak, my body racked with a dull ache. But a faint, greenish glow emanated from my chest, a flickering ember of hope in the sterile room. I was a living paradox, a horrifying fusion of two castes. But as I looked around at the rows of hopeful faces staring back at me, the faces of Luminless and Bone Turners alike, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this horrifying sacrifice might just be the spark that reignited a dying world.